Well, Falls Church, Virginia, it's good to see you this morning. That's the type of energy I'm looking for, y'all. Y'all got that energy like you ready to meet the next president of the United States. I love it, I love it, I love it. Well, I am former Virginia State Delegate Michael Futrell, and I am here today to support an amazing candidate. I know that's right. I know y'all know about it. In 2013, I was able to make history when I got elected to the Virginia House of Delegates. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, but I've lived a life where everyone continues to say, well, Michael, can't you just be realistic, right? And I tell people all the time, you're talking to the young black man who was raised by a single father next door to a drug house. If I only believed in what people told me was realistic, my life is not a possibility, right? Being the first ever elected African American to represent Stafford County in 350 years. It was about the people. And that is why we are here today. Because, amen, go ahead and clap for that, because it's true. We are in a time right now where this is not just about making history, right? Because Amy Klobuchar has already made history being the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate in Minnesota, right? Yes, this is about beating Donald Trump, but she's already proved that she can do that when she won those 42 rural congressional districts in Minnesota that Donald Trump had won in his election. But this right here is about us being effective. This is about us accomplishing things, and she's continued to show that over and over and over again, being one of the most effective U.S. senators that we have today, passing over 100 bills in the U.S. Senate. Now, for those of you who have followed me, whether you're up there or down here, you know, I've been a part of some amazing campaigns. I've had a chance to be able to inspire hope and change. I've been one of the people who helped lead a revolution, but right now what we are about to do is we're going to bring out the U.S. Senator that I truly know and I truly believe can help bring together this Big Tent party and unify our nation, because it's not just about winning, it's about getting things done. So put your hands together, stand on your feet, as we welcome our next President of the United States, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Support. It really means a lot. Standing next to Michael is my husband, John, right here. If you saw me pause when I was coming up, he said, I have to go get on a flight. And then I was saying, where are you going? So he's going to Maine and Massachusetts. So we're excited that he'll be there. So thank you for that. And then I also wanted to recognize our incredible organizers here, Emma, Sydney, Maria, and Gabrielle. Thank you for your work. And as I just was coming in, saw a few good friends, Sharon and Connor Cummings, who are leaders with the disability community. Look at, there you are, man. someone that you probably have not met, Cindy Vidman, who is the sister-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Vidman. Virginia gets this. The respect for our military, the respect for our federal employees, this idea that people devote themselves to our country regardless of party. I saw a few Republicans on my way in that were proud to identify. There we are, there we go. Some of them are being quiet right now. It was my friend John McCain, actually. One of the last things when John and I visited him, he showed me some words in his book, which reminds me of Lieutenant Colonel Vidman, actually. And the word said this. It said, because he was having trouble speaking at the end, and it said, "There is nothing more liberating in life than fighting for a cause larger than yourself." So much about what this election is about. It's what you showing up here in the middle of a Friday when you could be doing so many other things, how much this means to me, because I think you understand that that's what my campaign is about, that it's a little different than some of the other people that are running for president. It's one of the reasons that I announced in the middle of a blizzard and went through with it in the middle of a blizzard. One of the reasons that I announced on an island in the middle of the Mississippi River, because I wanted to make the point that it is time to cross the river of our divides to get to a higher plane in our politics. And that I wanted to make the point that when things go wrong, our country, we stand together. We don't divide. And that point where I announced was actually just about a mile and a half from where that 35W bridge collapsed in the middle of a beautiful summer day, and it's right near our house. And that place means so much to me, not only because of what happened there and the people that we lost, but also what people did when it happened. And I think this is a lot about the spirit of this great state, the extraordinary courage of people, ordinary people, when things happen. What do they do? What do they do in their job when they're threatened? What do they do when they've got to help someone, or when they've got to come up with a split-second decision about what they're going to do? That's what happened that day on that bridge. What you saw, and no one knew what had happened, this humongous highway crashing into the river, 55 cars and trucks submerged. So what do people do? Off-duty firefighter that was walking by tethers herself to the side of the river and dives in and out looking for survivors in the cars and trucks. A tasty truck driver who has 1 second to decide what to do. He could have rammed in the back of a school bus of kids. But instead, he veers off to what he must know in that second is almost certain death, and burns to death in his cab, but saves the kids in the school bus. The school bus that plummets 30 feet down and is hanging on the side of a guardrail. And there's a camp counselor on that bus named Hernandez. He has 1 second to decide what he's going to do when the doors open up, because it looks like the whole bus is going to go over, and he could have just run out. But instead, he got every single one of those kids off that bus to safety. That is our country. That is our country. That we are a country of shared dreams. That we have each other's back. And that what I think brings us together, I hope what brings you to come to see me today, is this simple concept that the heart of America is so much bigger than the heart of the guy in the White House right now. So one of the reasons I'm looking forward to debating Donald Trump is because our backgrounds are so different. Well, for one thing, I'm going to be able to say the Midwest is not flyover country to me. I live there. The people in this country are not poker chips at a bankrupt casino to me. They are my friends and my neighbors. And that, while you were given $413 million in the course of your life from your dad, this is my family's trust. My grandpa was an iron ore miner. He worked 1,500 feet underground. He had 9 brothers and sisters. He wanted to be in the Navy like so many great Navy members out of this state, but he couldn't do that because he had very sick parents. He was the oldest boy, and he had to go to work. His parents died. The youngest, Hannah, the youngest sister, was sent to an orphanage in Duluth, and he promised that he would go get her. And 2 years later, he borrowed a car, drove to Duluth, and brought her back. And every day he would go down in that cage with this black lunch bucket that my grandma would pack for him. And I always thought about, did he think of that life at sea? Did he think about picking blueberries that he loved and hunting? I don't know, but he did his job. That was his duty. And after a while, the mines, which had been so dangerous, got safer and safer because of unions, actually. The unions that made those mines safer. And it enabled him and my grandma to save money in a coffee can in their basement to send my dad to a 2-year community college. And you cannot fit $413 million in a coffee can in the basement of a little house. But they did that, and then my dad got to that 2-year community college degree. Then he got a 4-year degree at the University of Minnesota. And then he went on to become a journalist. And he traveled the world, and he wrote about all kinds of stuff, including politics. But for a long time, one of his main jobs was he covered the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just trying to show you that I'm resilient, okay? And he actually once wrote a book in the early 80s that is sadly still relevant today. It was called, Will the Minnesota Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl? So then my mom grew up in Milwaukee, which is going to be the site of our national convention. She was the kid of immigrants. They didn't have money. She wanted to be a teacher. She moved to Minnesota, and she taught 2nd grade until she was 70 years old. And I still talk to people that tell me she was their favorite teacher. So I stand before you today as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner, as a daughter of a teacher and a newspaper man, as the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Minnesota, and a candidate for president of the United States. And that, friends, is because we live in a country of shared dreams. That no matter where you come from or who you know or the color of your skin or how much money you have or where you worship or who you love, that you can make it in the United States of America. And that family trust, when people give you opportunity, when they give you, like my grandpa did for my dad, who did that for me and my mom, when they did that, whether it's a family member, a grandparent, whether it is someone at work, whether it is a teacher that gave that to you, I figure you do not go into the world with a sense of entitlement. You go into the world with a sense of obligation. An obligation to lift people up instead of shoving them down. An obligation to bring people with you instead of hoarding it for yourself. An obligation to lead with decency, which gets me to the topic at hand. There are a lot of people watching those debates. Okay, those debates have gotten pretty wild, all right? So at that last debate, now just so you know, I think that the president went after Mayor Bloomberg for being 5'4". I am the only one that is actually 5'4" that is on that scale. So I have so you can see me, okay? At that debate, and at that last debate, the vice president and Tom Steyer were going at it about something, and Tom Steyer was getting closer and closer as they were arguing, if you saw this picture, into my space, and I couldn't back away because I would have fallen off my step. And so then I'm just stuck there, and he's motioning, and he's really close to and then I kind of thought, you know what, he's got really deep pockets, so if something goes wrong, I'll be pretty good shape myself. I got slugged off that stage. But I think that one of the things that I always think about is there are people watching those debates who stayed home in 2016, right? There's people watching those debates who stayed home in 2016, but then, by the way, they voted, boy, did they vote big time in the state of Virginia in 2018. Those debates, or maybe in 2016, some of them voted for Trump, some of them voted for someone else, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And believe it or not, they don't agree with everything that's said on the debate stage. I don't agree with everything that's said on the debate stage, but for them, there are economic issues. This president made all kinds of promises. He made promises to rural America and to rural Virginia, right? That he was going to do all this stuff for them. What's happened? Has he done anything about rural health care? No. It's gotten harder. Rural education, rural broadband. It's still easier to get high-speed access in the country of Iceland with all their volcanoes than it is in rural Virginia. That is a true thing. He has made promises about prescription drug prices. He went on Fox News and said he would bring prices down so low it would make your head spin. Well, our heads are spinning, but because they're so high. He made promises about education, all kinds of things. So it is an economic check for many people, but it is more than that, and that is the key to this. It is also a decency check. It is this. This idea that back not that long ago, I know my parents would turn on the TV when a president was speaking, even if they didn't vote for that president, because they thought it was their obligation as a citizen to watch that, to have their kids watch it. Now, you tune this president on at one of his rallies and a kid walks in the room, you have to mute the volume because you're afraid of what he's going to say. And there are a lot of people that know that. I think about this guy in Minnesota who is a cattle rancher, and he took me on a tour of his ranch on this ATV, and we were dodging these big cows, and I thought, this is not how I want to die. And we went inside, and everyone had left, and he says, you know, we voted for Trump. And I said, what do you mean? The ranchers, your family? He said, no, I mean, I did, but I don't like to talk about myself, so I say we. And he said, and we did it because we were mad about health care. And then he said, we saw him standing in front of that wall. And I said, no, the wall really isn't built. And he said, no. The day after the inauguration, the CIA wall. Yeah. And this guy remembers when our president stood in front of that sacred wall that's covered in the stars of the anonymous CIA agents, many of them from this state or lived in this state, that lost their lives in the line of duty. And our president had the gall to give a partisan speech about the size of his crowd in front of that wall. And this guy remembers that. Then he said the Boy Scout Jamboree. And these are maybe not things, but he remembers when Trump gave a highly partisan speech to a group of Boy Scouts. We then had a discussion about my husband had been a Boy Scout, and I noted that his family has 6 boys, and 5 of the 6 became Eagle Scouts. But I never like to say which one didn't make it because I don't want to embarrass my husband. So he's gone now. He went to Maine. He's gone. He's not here. That was that guy. Or the voter in northern New Hampshire who was in a long line of people and they all have stickers. I'm a climate change voter. I'm a reproductive rights voter. I'm a Supreme Court voter. I said, sir, you don't have a sticker. He had a brown jacket. He says, yeah, that's because I was a Trump voter. And they don't have stickers here for us. And And these are my neighbors, and they don't know it. So don't say anything, but I am not doing it again. So I want us to remember that is the decency check. The patriotism check. I see veterans right out there. Thank you for your service. The patriotism check. The patriotism check is about a president that stands next to Vladimir Putin at an international conference, the G20, and when he is asked about interference in our election by a reporter, our president turns to that ruthless dictator and makes a joke about it. Think about it. Hundreds of thousands of Americans, thousands of Virginians have lost their lives on the battlefield standing up for democracy, for our democracy, for democracies abroad. That's what World War II was about. 4 little girls at the height of the civil rights movement in that church in Alabama, they lost their lives. Innocence. Because they were trying to be part of that democracy and other people were trying to shove them out of it. The best moments and the worst moments in our country's history are about democracy and our rights and our freedoms and who's willing to stand up for them and who's not. And this president makes a joke about it. So I don't want us to shut out those voters. I want us to bring them with us in addition to our fired up Democratic base. And I have the proof points. The governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, she ran with the fired up Democratic base and she brought a whole lot of people with us. What just happened down in Louisiana, right? Where we re-elected a Democratic governor. In Kentucky, just a few months ago, where Mitch McConnell now has a Democratic governor. And the state of Virginia, where you completely flipped the legislature. You did that. You did that. And you did it with this incredibly diverse group of candidates from all over your state. I've met them, I've worked with them. I was there in that first time when they nearly got what was like it was like a coin flip or whatever. It's just such a success story in your state. And by the way, I wanted to add one thing, since I've been able to live off that success story to a certain extent over the last few decades, is that when I got elected to the U.S. Senate, I remember, right, like a week before the election, and our daughter was like 12, and I was around the corner, and I heard someone, an older friend, asking our daughter what was the first thing she wanted to do when she moved to Washington. And, you know, they thought she was going to say visit the Lincoln Memorial, all those things. Well, what they didn't know is she was watching all those house hunting shows and those decorate, and she said, decorate a new condo. In any case, what we ended up doing, because of my friends actually, Blanche Lincoln and Mark Pryor, who had their kids in the Northern Virginia schools, in Arlington, be specific, we ended up renting, first in Rosslyn, and then we rented a house, and she attended the Arlington schools. She graduated from Washington and Lee, we came to Falls Church all the time. You know, we'd come here for breakfast. We went to that garden store. We went to the pottery place. I still have the paint you're on. Yeah, I know, really cool. So, but anyway, I was just able to see, because of the change and the investment in the schools, that beautiful school in Washington and Lee, and this incredible, I saw the pride, what? Okay, good, the new name, thank you. I got it. Justice. Okay, one person. Washington Liberty, thank you. And I was able to see what that meant with a school that had, I think, over 50% free and reduced lunch, something in those numbers, and was able to see the investment in Northern Virginia in a school like that, and what a difference it made in those kids' lives, and how proud they were of that school and all the activities. So I just want to say thank you for the politics, for what you've done to elect people. Thank you from my heart, but on behalf of so many families in this state. So let's get back to what we're talking about with this decency check, patriotism check. The other thing that I think is really, really important here is that we have an optimistic economic agenda for the people of this country. And that optimistic economic agenda means things like reducing health care. And I think we have a clear choice right now for the top of the ticket. I am someone that believes we should build on the Affordable Care Act, not blow it up. We already have a president that's trying to blow it up in the White House and kick people off of their insurance for pre-existing conditions, despite all the work that we did, that hard work to build a coalition to protect those protections. I'll never forget being in a small town parade and a woman with her toddler in a stroller says, "This is my son. He has Down syndrome. I will do anything to fight for his health care." And then she says, "This is what a pre-existing condition looks like." She knew those words because they don't come off the tip of your tongue. She knew those words because we worked hard and we built around that, and we brought in the disability community, we brought in the senior community, and we made a case. That's what I don't want to tear down. And I think we need to make things better. I would do it with a nonprofit public option to bring down the premiums. I would do it with building on it with long-term care, taking on an elephant that doesn't even fit in this room, to make it easier for people to stay in their own homes and build more affordable housing for people in this community. I would do it by taking on, without the stigma, addiction and mental health. Personal. My dad struggled with alcoholism his whole life. By the time John and I got married, he had 3 DWIs. At that point, the judge says jail or treatment, and he chose treatment. And in his words, he was pursued by grace because of his faith and his family and that treatment. And he is now 91. Wow. He's in assisted living. His AA group still visits him there. And in his words, it's hard to get a drink around here anyway. So should have that right to be pursued by grace. And there's going to be a whole ton of money that's going to come in from those opioid lawsuits. I think having a president that understands how you do that and where that money should go with treatment and making sure that mental health is not left behind when we look at hospital beds and we look at counselors in school and the like, that is going to make the difference. Having enough workers, and Virginia knows this well, to work in the areas where our economy needs them. So what does that mean? And I know there's this free college for all bumper sticker thing. I get this. But I actually think there's a better way and a bigger way to look at it. And that is where our economy and how do we fit our education system best with our economy. This is what I think. We are going to have over 1 million openings for home health care workers. So if I'm going to use hard-earned taxpayer money, I think we should use it to make sure that people are taking those jobs. That means things like using part of those Trump tax cuts that got to the wealthiest and use them to make sure that we have child care for people in this country so that they can take those jobs. It means making sure that we have a wage that they can live on if they take those jobs. It means we are going to have over 100,000 openings for nursing assistants in our nation that we don't know how we're going to fill. Those are 1- and 2-year degrees. We are going to have over 70,000 openings for electricians. We are not going to have a shortage of sports marketing degrees. We are going to have a shortage of plumbers. Now, I got a little grief from people with sports marketing degrees because I said this. I have nothing against sports or sports marketing. As you know, that's why I'm here. My dad was covering sports. But I just think we need to look smartly at how we do this. So if you look at it that way about the needs in our economy, you quickly get to these conclusions. 1, investment, big time, in preschool and K through 12, like you've done in the state of Virginia. 2, those 1- and 2-year degrees, which for half the people that get them end up being the beginning of completing a 4-year degrees, making those free. For the other half, that gives them the education they need for the job. Next, for college, what I favor is doubling the Pell Grants. The money that goes to the people that need it, from $6,000 to $12,000, and doubling the income level from $50,000 to $100,000. That's where you get the money. I would pay for it by bringing the capital gains tax rate closer to the personal income tax rate. That brings in something like $500 billion right there. Then, making it easier to pay back student loans. If multimillionaires can pay back their yachts and refinance them, students should be able to refinance their student loans. And this is key for the state of Virginia, where we have so many people who pursue public service, making that 10-year loan payment back program actually work and have it phased in. I would actually expand it to include these in-demand occupations. There's actually a list of them. And the only way you really make this work, I have a 100-day plan. I found 137 things I can do in the first 100 days to jumpstart our democracy, build trust, and by the way, they are all legal, okay? And I can do them. I can do them without Congress, but they are legal. And the first thing I would do in the first 100 seconds to make all of this work is fire Betsy DeVos. That you face here in Virginia. Investment in infrastructure. I have a whole plan that's paid for. Trump completely blew it when he did that tax bill without also doing infrastructure. And you know how important that is in Northern Virginia. Climate change. Something that is affecting your state in a big, big way, and it's affecting all people all over the country, whether it's the rising sea level, the effect that has in Norfolk, whether it is the fires we've seen in California, whether it's the flooding in the middle of the country. And making that case from the middle of the country actually is going to be really important. Because that is where we haven't had the votes. I worked on that first climate change legislation as a member of the Environmental Committee, and you know who was the leader on that? John Warner. John Warner was willing to cross the aisle to work on that bill. And so we were not able to pass that bill in the Senate. That was a sad moment. But we have this other opportunity that we cannot let go again. And that is everything from getting back into the International Climate Change Agreement on day 1 to day 2, bringing back the clean power rules, day 3, the gas mileage standards, day 4, 5, and 6, introducing sweeping legislation on energy efficiency and putting a price on carbon, but making sure the dividends go back to the people that need it, with incentives in the areas of the country that are going to see changes in jobs. And on day 7, we will rest. No, we won't rest. But anyway, we can do this. And any area of the country, in Virginia, where you have invented so many things and understand the value of technology, we simply have to put these incentives in place and do it in a way that works for everyone. And I know that we can get this done. So these are, thank you, these are these challenges. But to meet any of them, we've got to win. We have to win. And we just cannot eke by a victory at 4 in the morning. And that will be sweet. I know, that'll be good. But we cannot do that because our rule of law cannot tolerate a president that thinks he's above it. Our democracy cannot tolerate another 4 more years of a political party party and a president that thinks they can bulldoze through it. And our American dream cannot tolerate 4 more years of a president who thinks he can choose who lives it. That is our challenge. That is our challenge. And by the way, for a state that takes responsibility for things way, way back in our country's history, that understands the value of that history and the value of actually taking responsibility in your leaders, you get that in such a big way. We cannot tolerate a president that doesn't take any responsibility. He blames everyone for everything. He blames Barack Obama. He blames the generals that he commands. He blames the head of the Federal Reserve that he appointed. He blames the entire city of Baltimore. Or my personal favorite, he blames the entire kingdom of Denmark. Who does that? He does that. He does. I started saying that in New Hampshire, and a weird cult of Danes would follow me around with flags. And we must continue to be the beacon of democracy for the world. And that is going to mean, in a state that so values, I think of the great work of my good friend Mark Warner, who has stood up from the very beginning and calling it out on the intelligence side. That means actually renegotiating ourselves back into international agreements. We've got the New START treaty with Russia. That's going to come up right away in a new president's term. It means renegotiating ourselves back into the Iranian agreement when this president has made us so much less safe. It means standing up, and actually when you're going to make threats, there's that old saying in foreign policy, keep your promises and keep your threats. This president does neither. As I noted in the debate, he goes off and thinks he can just have a hastily called summit with Kim Jong-un and thinks with no deliverables and no allies at our side that he's going to produce something. Of course he doesn't. They're still launching missiles. So the key to all of this, I have this Council on Foreign Relations speech you should watch about the 5 R's. Thank you, one person who saw it. Renewing our leadership around the world, that is repairing our alliances instead of standing with tyrants, to stand with our allies, renegotiating ourselves back into these international agreements. It is about responding appropriately to threats around the world instead of sending out tweets at your bathrobe, in your bathroom at 4 a.m. And it means reasserting American values. But actually, it can just sum down to one simple R: returning to sanity in our foreign policy. So to do cheering this much for foreign policy. Yes. Okay, so to do this, as I said, we need to win big. And you know I come with the receipts. What does this mean? I have won every race, every place, every time. I am the only one. Since all those guys boast on the stage, I am the only one that's won every race all the way back to 4th grade. When my slogan that I've since abandoned was all the way with Amy K. I'm not going to use that anymore. I have won in those, I know, well, it could be viral. I guess I need that, because if you act sane in the debates and actually answer the questions, then you can't, oh, well, never mind. So, what I'm saying here is this, is that I have won in those rural districts that are so key, not just in the national front, but in the legislative front here in Virginia. And I've won in those suburban districts. I have won every single time, including when I ran against a congressman in Michelle Bachmann's district. And I do it by not selling out on our values. I do it by actually meeting with people, listening to them, and then getting things done. And respecting the fact that, yes, we are going to have major disagreements and you have to stand your ground, especially in the world of Mitch McConnell, yes. But also have to work with people that may have different beliefs than you, and you have to find that common ground, because courage right now is no longer just standing in the corner of a boxing ring, pushing out jabs, pushing out rhetoric, pushing out speeches. Courage is whether or not you're willing to stand next to someone you don't always agree with for the betterment of this country. That is courage. That is courage. And, you know, that is why when we were asked on the debate stage about the coronavirus, which I'm sure there'll be a lot of research going on in this state, and there'll be a lot of work, and this is a really serious matter. As I said 3 days ago when I said the president should address the nation, that this shouldn't be politicized, when I said he should come out with an exact amount of money that he needs right now, which he still has defied responsibility and not done that, when I said that we shouldn't have peeled back, as he did, some of the work that was doing across the world on pandemics and the like, that we should be planning ahead. But what I did say is that still, we're gonna have to do this as a team, our country. We are. And so instead of giving out my own website, okay, amyklobuchar.com, I gave out the CDC website on national TV, because like Northern Virginia, I believe in science. People or stopping them from putting out the science and the facts and the truth so we can make good decisions about how we're going to handle this. So these stakes are high. So my argument is this. I have won in these districts, and I've won them by simply telling the truth and looking people in the eye and bringing them with me. That's how I've done it. I've always told them, if you are tired of the extremes in our politics, I've said this now, and you're tired of the noise and the nonsense, you have a home with me. And as I sat through that impeachment hearing until late at night, not the result that I wanted, but I saw the incredible courage of my friend Doug Jones and Mitt Romney and how they voted. As I sat there and I thought everyone's talking about the founding fathers, I felt like I was, in the middle of Virginia, and they're talking about the founding fathers, and I kept looking at my colleagues, and after a while late at night, sort of bleary-eyed, they started to look like founding fathers. But I thought about all of this incredible courage of so many of our founding fathers and of our presidents of the past. And I thought of the story of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is so beloved because he got us through one of the worst times in our country's history. And when he died, they put his body on a train, and they took the train from Georgia to Washington, D.C., and people spontaneously lined the tracks, including a guy who was sobbing with his hat in his hand. And a reporter says, "Sir, do you mind me asking, did you know the president?" And the guy says, no, I didn't know the president, but the president knew me. He knew me. That in this state that understands history, that is what's missing right now with this guy in the White House. He doesn't have that sense of empathy. He cannot put himself in the shoes of the people of this country because he is always thinking about himself. And so I can promise you this. If you or someone in your family is figuring out how to stretch your paycheck to pay for your mortgage or your rent or the rent for someone in your family, I know you, and I will fight for you. If you're trying to figure out how to pay for the long-term care for your parents and child care or college for your kids, I know you, and I will fight for you. If you cannot figure out, should I fill the prescription drug for insulin, or should I fill the refrigerator for someone else or a friend, I know you, and I will fight for you. That is what a president should do. Be able to have that sense of empathy, and then take that empathy and put it into leadership to unite our nation. I am not going to be able to out-divide the divider-in-chief, but I promise you this. I will beat him in a big way. And the nimbleness that you've seen on the debate stage to take him on, but mostly I will restore the sacred trust between the president and the people of this country. Because I don't want to be the president for half of America. I want to be the president for all of America.